Well, once again, welcome everyone. My name is Andrea McAvoy. I am the Director of Client Services at UC Berkeley's Office of Intellectual Property and Industry Research Alliances. Thank you for attending today's Outside Consulting, Conflict of Interest, and Patent Acknowledgement session. It's one of a series of webinars that's offered by IPIRA on intellectual property, industry research, and other topics. Our last one for the fall semester is How to Start an Industry Consortium Program on Thursday, December 4th. Yeah, also, if you create or manage research data in your work, you may be interested in webinars hosted by the Berkeley Research Data Portal. Our Marketing and Communications Director, Deborah Summers, will be adding more information and links to the chat to register for these events. Following this webinar, please do watch for an email from her with many of the links that are shared during today's session. If you are a UC Berkeley faculty or researcher preparing for promotion or tenure conversation, you may be interested in requesting a new report that's been developed by IPIRA for faculty and researchers. It provides information on an individual faculty and research member's INE accomplishments tracked by our peer divisions, the Office of Technology Licensing, and Industry Alliances Office. Faculty and researchers can learn more and make a request by visiting our website. Today, we'll be hearing from Laleh Shayesteh, who is our Director of Intellectual Property and Administration. Also joining us, I believe, is Eric Geigerich, who is the Director of Industry Alliances Office. This webinar is conversational in nature, so please do unmute yourself to ask questions or type them in the chat. It is being recorded and will be made available on IPIRA's YouTube channel in the next coming weeks. If you have a topic or a question you'd like to remain confidential, please either ask Laleh afterwards or wait until the recording has stopped. A brief survey will appear when this session is over. We appreciate your taking the time to answer it. That way we know what other topics that we might develop for this series. To get us started, I'm going to launch a poll. Your answers to this very short poll will help us know who's here and your level of engagement with IPIRA. So here we go on that. So if you would just take a moment to identify yourself. Okay. Great. Thank you all for taking a moment to do that. And with that said, I will end the poll and hand it over to Laleh.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to this conversation. These always happen a lot easier and nicer if we maybe make it conversational. Basically, start asking questions as we are going along. Because then I will have had a chance to answer you live as we're talking. So, Deborah, do you mind? Thank you. There you go. Okay, so I've put together this one slide for our conversation today. The first is the patent acknowledgement. I want to know how many of you remember signing the patent acknowledgement when you started to work at the university. No answers. Okay. All right. So, okay, awesome. Well, I do remember that I signed mine. And basically, the patent acknowledgement is a document. And I don't know how long each of you has been around. In the old days, that patent acknowledgement was one whole long page. Nowadays, as of June of 2024, it's 2 paragraphs, basically saying that any intellectual property that you, as an employee of the university, will create during your time at the university will belong, or using university time, resources, and space will belong to the university. It applies to all of employees of the university. And what do I mean by the employee? So, for example, if you are uh, if you are a student who is self-paying, for example, a master's student or an undergrad, you are not going to have to sign this acknowledgement because you are not an employee of the university, unless the student is working on a project that is receiving government funding, or sponsor funding or foundation funding through the university, at which time they're going to have to assign the rights to the intellectual property to the university. And what intellectual property does this apply to? All inventions, all copyrightable subject matter, data, innovations, material, everything. What it does not apply to would be, for example, if you are a professor, to your teaching material. Your teaching materials will be entirely yours. They do not belong to the university. University will not ask for an assignment of that intellectual property to the university. So basically moving there from there, then one of the most frequent questions that I receive is, hey, I want to go do outside consulting. Such and such company has come along, is asking me for a consulting. Can I do that? And what should I be looking out for? Okay. So as far as the university is concerned, all employees of the university are welcome and encouraged to do outside activities, including consulting. There is a certain number of hours that each faculty member, for example, is allowed to do consulting during a year. Other than that, basically anybody can consult. However, a consulting agreement that an employee of the university will enter into with a company is a personal agreement to the consultant. So it's a personal agreement for the employee of the university. So as university members, we don't want to get mixed into it because we are not supposed to get mixed into it. It's personal to you. However, I have always offered that I am more than happy to work with you if you have received a consulting agreement to basically identify if there are difficult sections in that consulting agreement that could get you in trouble. And I will do that as not as a member of the university. I will do that as a friend, basically. University is not supposed to meddle into these things. But, if you need help, I'm always there. So consulting being a personal agreement. These are some of, I have, put in bullet points, some of the things that you need to be worried about, a consultant needs to be worried about. Because as a consultant, you will always be handed a document, a contract to sign for your consulting with the company. First of all, the very first is who will own the IP created under this consulting agreement. The company will always there's always that section that says, as a consultant, any IP that you will create for the company will belong to the company, right? That's a problem because as an employee of the university, you have already given your right to all IP to the university. So you cannot agree to provide 100% of everything to the company unless what you're doing with the company is completely separate and different from what you're doing with the university, and that you have not used university time, resources, or funding to do the work that you're doing under your consulting agreement. Because this falls under California labor law, I think it's 2879, that says you can do, if you create IP that is outside of your day job, literally, then university will not be interested in it and will not ask for ownership of it. However, this is also the piece that gives the biggest pause and scare to the companies that you consult for. Why is that? Because if there's new IP that you create and you want to assign, the company thinks that should be assigned to them. However, that assignment is subject to your already previously assignment to the university. There will be a cloud on the title of that IP. Then one of the things that university does is we suggest to the company and to our employees, if you create IP for the company that you're consulting for, please come back and fill out what is known as a disclaimer, invention disclaimer. It's a very, very brief document that says, hey, hey, IPIRA, I have created an invention for the company. We really wanted to be brief. We really don't want to know the confidential information regarding that invention. But we need the bare bones just so we have an idea of what it is. And a person like me will receive that invention disclaimer and we will say, okay, we will take it over to your department head. And we will tell them, somebody like me will tell the department, we let the department head know, hey, the inventor has created this not using university resources or time. They have created it for the company and they are asking for this invention to be disclaimed. And then the department head will sign and say, okay, no problem, disclaimed. And then I will provide, or a person like me will provide a document to the inventor, for example, to our employees saying, we disclaim this invention, no problem, you can take it back for the company. UC has no claims on this invention. This makes the company very happy, and it also makes our employees very happy. So that's one piece to be worried about and careful about. The other one is one of the troubling sections in any agreement for a consultant would be you agree to assign anything that you have created for the company or any other improvements you will do on this invention to the company. Now, that is going to be a big problem because now that will force you, for example, if let's say you have now created an invention for the company, your consulting is over, you're back at the university, and you create an improvement to that invention using government funds. Government needs to have rights to that. But if you have already assigned it to the company, then you're going to have a big problem. The government is not going to be happy, and chances of you receiving, or let's say it's a foundation or a company that wants to provide money for your research. If you have already given the rights away to that research, to the improvements that you had created at the company, then you will very likely lose the chance to receive money to further your research. So this is another one to be really, really careful about. Let's see, what else? How about confidential information? One of the parts that is really, really important is the company will say, we are providing you confidential information. You're not supposed to provide it to anybody else. Perfectly fine. That's awesome. But then they go on to say confidential information is anything that, any information regarding what we do and anything we tell you while you're at the company, anything we tell you orally. That is a problem. So one of the articles that I force basically to always be in an agreement is that the confidential information will need to be reduced, will either needs to be in writing when provided to you or be reduced to writing within about 10 days or so to make sure that there is a record of that confidential information in your hands so you're not going to get in trouble. Let's say then 3 years down the line, you talk about anything, something, and the company will come back and say, that was my confidential information. You're going to get in trouble. That university will have nothing to do with it, but you as the employee of the university, as a person who agreed to that contract, are going to get in trouble because going to lawyers and getting under litigation just to make sure that you did or did not provide that confidential information to others is going to be a very costly process. The other one would be that always appears in these consulting agreements is liability. They say the agreement will say you take on liability for anything and everything that we might do while you're with your consulting services. That is a big problem, right? Because as a consultant, you're providing information, you're providing perhaps IP or creating IP, but then you're taking on way more than what you're providing. So let's say that the company will start to use the results of your consulting, and the company gets sued for something else that has probably used 1% of what you have provided to them, or the part that you provided was 1% of what the company provided. The company gets sued, they come after you. So one of the things that I've always done, and I encourage for all of our consultants to do, or the all of our members who go consulting, is to then add a piece that says, however, my liability is not going to be any more than what you have paid me under this agreement. So if they have paid you 10,000 under the agreement, the limit of your liability under any articles that they get sued for should not be more than $10,000. Anything beyond that is just not acceptable. And finally, which this is a piece that is really important for the university, is conflict of interest. And I know that our employees have to, especially those who would like to engage in consulting, do fill out conflict of interest forms. And conflict of interest can arise when a couple of things could happen, right? If you are if you're providing consulting to the company, but at the same time are receiving and money from the company to do research for them, that's a big conflict. You're not supposed to be receiving money from the company to do research while at the same time you're consulting. That's a big no-no. Otherwise, again, you should not be There's a certain number of hours that each employee is allowed to consult. So another conflict could arise if you're actually consulting way more than you're supposed to be. And other than that, I am actually done with my talk. So do I have any questions? Thomas. Yes.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Um, Regarding so you're talking about an NDA and or MNDAs, which are pretty common. I can't even remember how many I've signed. Everyone wants one. Do you have a template for one that would kind of cover that that point that you made about, information produced needs to be in writing? Because I haven't seen that.
So
Uh,
the companies, so usually NDAs that you are asked to sign as a consultant are not NDAs that come from the university, right? Therefore, they don't have that piece in them. But if you receive any, reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to work with you to stick that language in. Basically, to say, they all have a definition of a confidential information. Confidential information is anything that is, given to you, told you, any PowerPoints, any documents, anything, and anything that a reasonable human would know that should be confidential, including anything we talk to you about. Like, okay.
That's
No.
everything, right?
Exactly. There's a hard no to that. And it's supposed to be. So, and I always just stick at the end of that sentence that is written down when provided to me as the consultant, or reduced to writing within 10 days of disclosure if it is not in writing.
Great. And then, sorry, one quick question regarding the IP agreement that is signed by staff. I had a visiting scholar that I'm onboarding right now that asked about having to sign one. He works for a startup in San Francisco. He has a PhD, but works for a startup that files lots of patents on their innovation, and he's concerned about signing up.
Okay, so we are so that's an entirely different area and I thank you for bringing it up. There are two types of visiting scholars that we receive. One are visiting scholars from other universities, and with them we do a modified patent acknowledgement form that basically says you will assign your rights both to your home institution and to this institution. So if invention arises, it will go to your lab and also, let's say, if they're from MIT to MIT. If we are receiving a visiting individual from companies, the answer is that because they're now coming into a public educational institution, they're gonna have to sign our patent acknowledgement. There's no way around that. They're basically, and their company needs to know that. So it would be with the knowledge of the company that what they would create here will belong to here. Let me ask a different question for me. I ask a follow-on question. Is the individual working on a collaboration agreement with you, or they're just coming to visit and do work as an intern, as a visiting person? Yeah.
Yeah, so we currently have we're a sub-awardee to a CAL FIRE grant that they have for their company. But the visiting scholar appointment is just for future collaboration. So there's none of the funding mechanisms that you mentioned that were, part of that IP and why that IP agreement exists are associated with that.
Right.
So it's his ability to come to campus and work in the lab in collaboration with us.
In that case, yeah, they do have to sign that patent acknowledgement for. Ultimately, the nice thing about it is since it's under CAL FIRE, if I remember correctly, the IP will belong to us or to the entity that's creating it, but it has to be non-exclusively licensed back to CAL FIRE. If it is, let me think again. And if it is copyrightable subject matter, CAL FIRE might actually ask to own it. I remember that. So
Yeah, okay, I can follow up with you. Sorry to co-op your Q&A for
no, that's perfectly
my
fine.
personal concerns. Okay.
These are the fun parts.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, no,
Thanks
no
for the
problem.
response.
If you have the Phoebe number, I'll look into it. Any other questions?
When disclaimers are filed, requested, is it most often that the department heads come back and say that that's okay, that there's no overlap, or is there usually back and forth just comparing the outside work to their research?
So for all the years I've been here, I've done, I don't know, almost 100 of them, and there has only been once that I've received an absolute no from the department head, and that was because the student was using the exact software that they had used here at UC in the company that they were consulting for. I mean, it was the exact same work. And so the head of the department had a big no. Other than that, everything has been a yes, no problem. Other questions? Okay. In that case, then I'll give you back another half hour, and I want to thank you again. And feel free to reach out anytime you like with questions. We try to always be available. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laleh, and also thank you for the questions. I learned a lot about visiting scholars today. So thank you again for attending today's session. Please don't hesitate to reach out to anybody on the IPIRA team. That if you would please provide your feedback on the survey that will appear once you've exited this session. And if you would like someone from our office to reach out to you, be sure to include your contact information on that form. So with that said, everyone enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Take care.